All right, let's get started. Hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome to this year's Dreamforce, what's going to be our best Dreamforce yet. This is Dreamforce, so it's always a time for you to come, meet new people, learn about the new things that we have created here at Salesforce. I want to personally thank each and every one of you for coming to this session. I know it's really late. It's also contending with the ever-popular True to the Core by Brett Taylor and also Parker Harris, so you have my thanks here. I hope we have a very wonderful session. I am very interested in presenting about this. This is something that's very dear and passionate to my heart. So my name is Nick Chen. I'm an architect here at Salesforce. Previously, I'm working on a lot of the tooling stuff that we built over at Salesforce. So if you ever use the Apex debuggers, the Visual Studio Code extensions for Salesforce DX, or the developer console, those are the things that my team has built. Recently this year, I've pivoted over to DevOps because I'm completing, and I'll talk more about it in the next few slides, completing this wheel of how the application lifecycle management would work. We've invested a lot in coding, in testing, and debugging. We're going to make sure everyone now has what they need for CI and CD. So with that, let's get started. You're probably familiar with this already. You've seen this hundreds of times. These are the forward-looking statements. Basically, what I'm going to show you today are a lot of things that have not been released yet. If you're making any purchasing decisions, please base them on things that we have already released. Now, getting to the meat of stuff. Today, we're here to talk about CI, continuous integration, and CD, continuous delivery. In all my years as a software developer, nothing delights customers more than having useful new features quickly, right? And this is not just something that I'm claiming here. There's actually a book. How many of you have actually seen this book or heard about it? Oh, quite a few. All right, perfect. So this is the book. It's by Nicole Forsgren. She actually gave a talk during the Architecture Summit internally at Salesforce. And a lot of us really, really like this book. And basically what this book says, and I'm just quoting the quintessential one here, is that software delivery performance drives organizational performance measures like profitability, productivity, and market share. And here's the kicker. It also drives non-commercial measures like efficiency, effectiveness, customer satisfaction, and achieving mission goals. In short, what this is saying is that the faster you can actually deliver software, the more happy everyone would be, both internally and externally. And so you may be asking yourself, what has Salesforce done to make it easy to ship features fast? Well, Salesforce is all about doing stuff inside and out, making it very easy with point-and-click tools and also clicks and code. So what happens here is that you could have two developers working on this project, and they're delivering a feature. Imagine that the feature we're delivering is actually an accounting feature. So these two developers add an account preview feature and immediately ships live to the customer, because this is how it works in the org. The customer is, of course, happy. You add a new feature here, the customer is delighted as well. But what happens when you actually add something that's buggy, right? So what happens here is that you're affecting your customer in a bad way, and the customer is definitely not happy with this. So with this is the sort of the benefits and risks of doing something that's inside just one org. You can deliver features really, really quickly, but at the same time, if something goes wrong, it goes straight to the customer. So with that, we're advocating something else. We want to deliver features fast, but also safely. And the way we do this, some of you are already familiar with this, is that we split this and introduce two orgs. So one we'll call the staging org, the other one we'll call the production org. And basically what you do is that you do your development first in the staging run, do your quality assurance testing, and then once it's ready, bring it over. So in this case, the account preview feature is ready, we ship it over. The other one is ready as well, we ship it over. But we caught the buggy one and we fix it before we ship it over. So in this case, the customer is extremely happy and everyone is celebrating because this is great. So this is good, but we can do better. This is how you do it safely, but we can also do it collaboratively. As you notice here, there are two developers. Why do we need two developers to storm on each other and work within just the confines of one org? We can do better and actually go ahead and split this and introduce yet more, so we'll call environments in there, so that each developer gets his or her own sort of org to work on. So now you can work this way, and then you can bring your features over and then ship it with greater efficiency. So this talk is about all the patterns that makes this happen. So Salesforce DX, and this is the application lifecycle management and the wheel I was talking about. It's about planning, coding, merging and testing, UAT, and also releasing. So we're focusing on the outer circle right here. There are lots going on. I wouldn't have time to talk about all of it. Today, we're concentrating on the lower left quadrant, which is continuous delivery and continuous integration. I'll pause for a bit. I see a lot of people taking out the cameras, so you can do this. If there's one thing you take away from this talk, it's about CI/CD and how it can make things ship much, much faster. Okay. So today's patterns, where did I get the inspiration for this? We really talked to a lot of customers. We empathize with their pain points. And these are the quotes from them. So I'm just going to read a bunch of them, starting from the left. I only want to help make the product DX better and more successful, as I think can be a real changer. I believe that framing and wrapping the tool in language that admins already understand is crucial. Right? The second one, a lot of the Git stuff didn't make sense to me at first. I really had to dive into it and use the wrong command 5 times in a row, and get the 6th time right. The last one is, we consider having just developers adopt Salesforce DX at company A, but don't see the use in having 50% of the team have it and 50% not have it. If admins are still going to commit their changes directly to Sandbox, it would just screw up the pipeline process. So this is really the inspiration for the patterns that we have today. So here's another real-life scenario. Like, without these patterns, for those of you who have not used Salesforce DX, what is the workflow like? I'm a developer, so I come in, I'll go to my terminal, I have to type in git clone that repository to start working on my source code, cd into it, which is just changing to the directory, and then run a couple of SSD commands to actually go log in, authenticate against the scratch shot, create the scratch shot, push my source over, run my tests. I do this every day. It gets repetitious. And what's going on is that we can actually use automation to make many of these things much, much simpler. All right, so today's patterns, I'm going to introduce 3 of them. The first is the streamlining of the creation of scratch shots. The second one is the streamlining of pull request creations. And last but not least is continuous integration, so that we can set up test runs on each pull request. All right, one more thing I want to talk about before going to the demo. What I'm talking about today are patterns. They're not products yet. Now, that being said, we have the safe harbor statement, so I'm going to make a very forward-looking statement. Look forward to what we're going to introduce next year at DX. We're going to take some of these patterns, actually productize it to make it easier for you to use. But if you need to set something up today, you can apply the patterns that I'm going to show you today. All right, so what are we building? We're building a point-click-based approach on the CI/CD system. We're going to use GitHub. And basically what's going to happen is that I can add a card. So you can imagine you are using Kanban or Scrum, and you drag and drop stuff over, and this is what you have. All right? There's magic that's going to happen behind the scenes, and we'll work together to create that magic. Okay? This is going to be using the Salesforce DX command line tool. It's going to be using GitHub as well. If any of you have been to GitHub Universe last week, they introduced GitHub Actions. It just went GA. Now, what I'm showing you today can also be done with Circle CI, Travis CI, Bitbucket, and so on and so forth. We have been talking to them, but for today, I'm just going to concentrate on GitHub Actions. All right, enough talking. Let's go over to the demo. OK, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over here. I hope the screen is big enough so you can see. And basically what this is the Dreamhouse SFDX app. It is a sample app that we've been using at Dreamforce and also DX. And basically, it's a real estate application. It's open source and available on GitHub. So the first thing I'm going to do is just do a warm-up and show you how GitHub Actions actually works. So I can click here in Actions. And I can go ahead and say New Workflow. And I'm going to use the simple one, which is set up this workflow first, just to get people started. As you can see here, a GitHub action is quite simple. It has a name. It is triggered on several commands. You can see that's push, pull request, schedule, check suite, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to use push, which means it's triggered on every time that I actually commit to my Git repository. Then it runs this job, which is on Ubuntu latest distribution of Linux. Then it runs several steps. I'm going to change this. So instead of saying just hello world, let's say hello Dreamforce 2019. All right, just to make it a bit more interactive. And then you can run different things. But basically, this is the anatomy of an action. And we'll get to more complicated actions later on. So this is really simple. It doesn't do anything much, but it just gives us an idea of how actions will actually run. So I've committed it, and nothing has happened. That's fine. Because what happens behind the scenes is that if you go to the Actions tab again, you see now that the thing I just committed is running. So what this does, it goes ahead, triggers based on the push that I've done, and it goes and runs the things there. So you can see here it's gone through. It's really quick. It's gone through checking out the source code, running the one-line script. And as you can see here, this is live. I just typed in hello Dreamforce 2019. All right? Just the basis of GitHub Actions. Now let's get to the meat of stuff. So the first thing I want to do is simulate how a developer will actually work on something, right? So I'm going to go in and create an action first, create a new workflow. Oops. set up workflow for yourself. I'll call this Kanban YAML. I'm going to get rid of all of this. I'll zoom in a bit over here. And then I'm going to cheat by typing really, really quickly. So this is what I'll do for starting a new work item. It's going ahead. It's moving on a project card. So whenever I drag and drop the project card on my Kanban board, this is what's going to trigger the action. It's going to run here, and these are my steps. So I'll go ahead and cheat again. So what this does first is that it's checking that I'm dragging it from the to-do to the in progress. That's the trigger for it. As you can notice, YAML is very nice to work with, but it's really white space sensitive. So a lot of the time here, I'll be talking and also just adjusting the white spaces. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to check out the source code so that we can actually act on it. No surprises there. And then here is where we do a bit more. We're going to start our populating with the SFDX URL secret, authenticate against our dev hub, create the scratshot, push the source over. Now, some of you may be asking, like, this is a lot of steps. Well, the good news about this is that you don't have to repeat it over and over. Once one of your DevOps engineers actually does this, then you're good to go, right? You'll be able to run this multiple times. Pardon me while I just format this again. Okay. So now we've pushed the source over. What else do we need to do? We need to go ahead and check that we can create the user, so that we're creating a user over here, and then the user actually sends stuff over. Okay. And for those of you trying to take photos, this is an open source project, so you can go to the project later on. It's a bit small, so it's a bit hard to see. We're not going to go through all the things here. Okay, so I'm creating this. And last but not least, I want to be a bit fancy. I want to send an email to myself when this is done. Okay, so I'm going to use Trilio SendGrid so that when this is completed, it goes ahead and sends me an email that tells me my scratshot is ready. Last but not least, I need to actually stash something so that it will actually show and do this later on. And I'll illustrate why this is necessary. So this looks good to me. I'm just going to do a quick sanity check. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Nothing's going to happen yet because it needs a trigger. The trigger is actually moving something from the Kanban board over. It's spinning there. Let's give it some time to actually commit the file. While it's doing this, I'm going to go over to my issues queue, create a new issue over here. OK, I was a bit worried that the internet was acting up, but it seemed to be good. To property page, I'm going to go ahead and submit the new issue. I'm going to assign it to a project. We have this over here. Looks good. Now, if I open projects by clicking on this, you can dive in here. You see that I have a backup in case something goes on, but this is the one we just created. If I drag and drop this now, this is going to trigger the action behind the scenes. So what is the action that's running? Let's go back to the Actions tab and take a look at that. So you can see here the starting a new work item is running right now. So as this is going on, I'm going to explain it by splitting my screen side by side. All right, let's get out of this first. Drag and drop this over here. People are able to see this. All right, so what's going on behind the scenes? So behind the scenes, we are using a Docker-based actions. How many people are actually familiar with Docker here? Oh, very good. This makes it a bit easier to explain. So Docker is a containerization technology. Basically, if you can think of it in a nutshell, it wraps all your dependencies and everything into a binary that you can use and ship with everything else. That makes it really, really reproducible. So in case you need to run the same actions again, you can do it over and over with great precision. So we've actually gotten the force.com Salesforce DX Docker that's actually going through here. This is the official one. If you want to use it, we encourage you to use it. It's used by the Visual Studio Code extensions. It's used by our internal CI and CD. And of course, it's usable by you as well. Please go ahead and take a look at that. Now, on top of that, what we've done is actually use this Docker image that's residing in Docker Hub And right now, on the left-hand side of the screen, GitHub is downloading it and pushing it over to GitHub itself. As you can see here, it's downloading the different layers. Each layer is the Heroku 18 or the Node.js one that's going on. So as we're dragging it, it's actually downloading it, and not necessarily in the same order. It can reconstitute it later on. But the important thing is, by the end of this, you have a fully running Docker image that you can run all the actions on. Okay? And then on top of that, we build the Salesforce DX Actions, and this is what really powers GitHub. So you come here, you can go ahead. In this case, I'm using the force source push. So what this does is that as I checked out my source code and it's running on the GitHub action, we can actually push the source code over. Okay? I also use the SendGrid action, which will send me an email at the end of the day. And in this case, I just use it, and I use the display user JSON, display user API key, and so on and so forth. As you can see here on the left-hand side, we're making good progress. We've gone through, we're creating the scratch shop. So the first thing I'm going to do is check that it's a move from the to-do to the in-progress, because we're going to do a different action from the in-progress to the ready for review. So this acts like a gate to make sure that this is only triggered when you move it this particular way. Okay? So then we check out the source code. This is using the git clone command, very, very similar to the animated GIF that I showed earlier. And then we run a bunch of SFDX commands. We authenticate against the dev hub, we create the scratch shop, we push the source to the scratch shop, we create a new user, and we change the user's password so that we don't interfere with the same user over here. All right, let's take a look at the push source. It's about 37 seconds. Last time I tried this, it finishes in about 50. Right? So once it does that, it creates the user. We're going to anticipate and send an email through SendGrid. Now, I could have done this with anonymous Apex using the internal stuff at Salesforce, but I just want to show how you can use different features and different services across the industry with GitHub Actions. All right, this looks good. Our push source actually completed. We're creating a user, changing the password, displaying the username. So as this is going on, I'm going to do one last step. I'm going to go ahead and stash the credentials for later. The reason this is important is because once we make changes to the scratch shop, we need to be able to authenticate against it and retrieve it to create a pull request. All right, I'm using this key value store API. It's just a service that's available out there. It is just a demo. I cannot vouch for or against its security, but for the purposes of this demo, we'll just use this because it's simpler to just set up. All right, so far so good. Looking at the left-hand side of my screen, everything is completed, as you can see here. Now, the moment of truth is I'm going to go over to my mail, and you can see here that we actually have actual junk mail. I apologize for that. And also, this is the one that just came in. Someone called out the time. It's 5:17. As you can see here, this just came in. So what has happened here is that we have actually created a scratch shop, populated the scratch shop, and sent an email to the user who initiated that, so the scratch shop is usable for that person. If I click this now, it'll open, and we can have a freshly populated scratch shop. And then I'm going to show you something here about the scratch shop. It's not just a new empty scratch shop. It has been populated from what was in your repository, so it's really ready for the next person to work on. I think this is really, really useful, because that's one of the asks from a lot of developers, is that we need something to help us create a scratch shop and get it ready to be worked on. So here we are. I'm just going to populate it with the sample data just to make sure it's running. And just to convince you that, again, this is real, and we have all the data over there, I'm going to flip over to Apex. You take a look at it. It's created today, 5:16 p.m. This was freshly created scratch shop, freshly created and push source over there. Okay? All right. So now, remember, the issue that we're trying to work on is that we are trying to go ahead and work on adding the bot to the property page. So let's go ahead and do that. And the way we do this is we'll use my favorite tool, Lightning App Builder. And if you come over here, we'll edit the Property Explorer page. Let me zoom in a bit so people can see. If you see today, the Property Explorer is this tab over here. If you zoom in, there's no bot at the bottom right corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in, come here, drag and drop the bot over here. So you see that the bot is at the bottom there. Save it. Refresh this. Go ahead and do this. And now we have a bot there, so I can type help. And the bot is going to respond. OK? So it seems like I've completed my user story. Let's go ahead and see what else we can do with GitHub Actions to automate this. So one of the asks that people have is that, well, a lot of my admins are working in the org now. They are not familiar with Git. How do they create a pull request with the changes? Because ultimately, I want to merge it back into my version control system. Now, let's write GitHub action to just accomplish that. So going back over here, I'm going to go into actions. I'm going to do a new workflow. I'm going to set up a workflow for myself. Over here, I don't want to call this main. I'm going to call this, whoops, did it too quickly there. New workflow, set a workflow for yourself. This will be the pull request. Clear this out. Pattern 2. And this is the creating a new PR. So again, the skeleton is just there. We're creating a new PR. It's again on the project card move, but this time we're going to change it so that it actually runs on when we're moving it from in progress to ready for review. Okay? Move this over here. Looks good. And again, we're going to check out the source code. So nothing special there. Then we're actually going to go ahead and create the pull request. Oops. Here we go. So it checks out the source code and stashes the credentials that we saved just now. It's going to extract it, and then it's authenticating against the scratch-out. And last but not least, this is important stuff. It will retrieve the metadata changes for you. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Let's go on to the bottom here. It's going to go ahead and create the changes, commit it, and push your changes. So as you can see here, all of this really convoluted and repetitious steps can actually be just automated here to make it much easier for your developers. And last but not least, it's going to go ahead and create the pull request right now. Okay, so it's creating the PR. All right, let's do a sanity check. What did we just do? I go ahead, check that it's moving from in progress to ready for review. I'm checking out the source code and stashing the credentials for that scratch-out, authenticating against the scratch-out, retrieving the metadata changes, committing the Git changes, and pushing those changes over, and I'm creating a PR. All right, looks good to me. Let's start the commit again. All right, this has been committed right now. So if I go over to my projects, go over to my feature development, drag and drop this guy over here, go over to my actions. You can see that in a bit, it's going to start creating a new PR system. Here we go. So let's zoom into this. It's going to take a while to run again, so I'm going to go over, split this over here so that we get a chance to actually explain and see it running behind the scenes as well. All right, so what's going on? This may sound a bit repetitious, but what's going on here is that we're using the same Docker-based action, the same container that we had before, which is Salesforce DX 1. It's copying everything over, as you can see here, that it's downloading over from Docker Hub over to GitHub. And we have Heroku, we have Node.js, we have Java 11, and so on and so forth. So this is a fully complete container that you can actually use. As it's doing that, it's also going to go ahead and use the Salesforce DX actions. In this case, I'm doing a few stuff. I'm doing the authentication. I'm doing the retrieve and everything else. So basically, everything that's available in the Salesforce CLI can be invoked through this action. And all you have to do is change the args here and pass it all the different things that you want. Okay. So then we're going to use the GitHub push action. This is a different action. Basically, what it allows you to do is that you can go push your branch over to GitHub using something like this. So you can specify the branch format. A lot of this is interpolation that's going on. It's not controlled by me. It's just the syntax that GitHub Actions is actually using. And you can tell it to unstash the project, and we're going to push it and force the pushing over. right? And then we're going to check for the move from in progress to review in progress. And once we do that, we clone the source code. We unstash the credentials for the scratchshot that I stashed earlier at KVDB. And this is basically what allows GitHub Actions to log in on behalf of you and take out those changes with the retrieved metadata. Okay? So you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, it's retrieving the metadata changes right now. Okay, so we're using for source retrieve. The important thing with this is that it puts it in the right format. So for those of you who have developed in Salesforce before, you know that there's the metadata format, and then there's the new source format that we have for Salesforce CLI. So this does it the right way for you so that it's easier to do your comparisons. Okay? And then we push changes to a branch, and that's it. As you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, everything is already completed. So let me move over here. If I go to pull request, there's one pull request right now. You should see two, the one that was just created. Zooming in here. So open 26 seconds ago. This is still live. So what happens when we have a pull request? Well, let's open it. So you can see here, this is a pull request. There's a file changed. This is already the changes that the admin has done right inside the org by dragging and dropping. And you can see here through the use of GitHub Actions and CI/CD, what's happened is that we have taken those changes, put it in the right metadata format, created a pull request for you so that now a developer or someone else can come in and review it. And this admin doesn't need to know about Git or anything else. It's all done within GitHub Actions. All right, so we can go ahead and review the changes and move it in. But remember the last pattern that I'm going to talk about is setting up CI/CD. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go ahead and create our last action for today. So we do a new workflow, set a workflow for yourself. I'm just going to call this run tests. Come over here. And this time I'm just going to cheat by just doing this because we know sort of what's going on already. I don't have to go through this step by step. So you can see here what is triggering this is that it's doing this on a pull request. It's either assign, open, synchronize, or reopen. And what it's going to do is going to go in, check out the source code, populate it, run it, create the scratchshot, push it over, run the test, and cleans up the scratchshot for you. All right? So let's go ahead and save this so we can commit a new file. Looks good. So if I go over to my pull requests, this is the pull request that we've seen. I'm going to assign it to myself. And what happens now, in a few minutes, is going to go ahead and tell you that I'm starting the CI build pull request. So you'll take your changes, create a new scratchshot with those changes in this particular branch, and run it to make sure that nothing is actually broken. So if we go over to details here, it's running the same thing. This is really getting really old, but I'm just going to do it one more time, which is we come over here, move this here. And you can see what's going on over here. Same Docker-based actions, the same things that we're doing. We're using the Docker action containers. It's going to go ahead, authenticate, push. Git clones the source code. Here's the thing that's different that I want to point out. It's smart enough to know to check out the right pull request, so it's not doing it from master. It's doing it in that particular branch that was triggered. Okay. And then it runs these commands. So authenticate the dev hub, creates a new scratchshot, pushes the source to the scratchshot, runs the test, and cleans up the scratchshot over there. All right, so I'm going to actually just leave this running behind the scenes and continue with my slides. And then at the end, I'll jump back just to show you that this thing actually completes. All right. So here we are on our slides. So just as a recap, what are the patterns that we talked about today? We talked about how we can streamline the creation of scratchshots, which is a much asked for feature for many of our customers because they do not want to go ahead and say, okay, this is how you have to do it. Go to the terminal, use Git, install everything else. You can actually do this very easily through GitHub Actions and any other platform that supports it. We also streamline the creation of pull requests because another ask from our customers is that you have people working here, they're not really familiar with Git. We don't really want to force them to learn Git unnecessarily. So again, we can streamline this and automate a lot of the creation process to create the PR with all the changes there so that a person can go in and look at it. And last but not least, of course, to guarantee the correctness and safety of what the changes are, we set up continuous integration so that with each pull request, we can run that over and over. It's adding a lot of confidence to the software development process that we have. All right, so what's next? So there are a lot of other sessions. Like I said, DevOps is going to be something that's really important that's coming out at Salesforce. So I encourage you to check out the sessions. Tomorrow there will be how an architect thinks about Salesforce DX. There's going to be an open conversation about DX that's going on. So if you tell us what you like, what you don't like about Salesforce DX, this is the place to go. And of course, modern AOM, top 10 release management patterns and misconceptions that's going on. And last but not least, release management for everyone going on tomorrow, on Friday at 12 p.m. Okay. Again, like I mentioned earlier, with the caution, the caveat of the forward-looking statements, we're going to have a lot about DevOps and release management at Trail DX. If you're not registered for it, it's actually June 9th to 10th in San Francisco, so this will be a good time to actually register for it. All right, with that, thank you. We still have a lot of time here, so if anyone wants to actually go to the mic or come up here to ask questions, I'll be happy to take any questions you have. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of Dreamforce. Enjoy the concert tonight.